Lastly, on behalf of our owner, Mari Curley, management, and my fellow staff members, I just wanted to thank our community for all the support we've received, especially during this tumultuous year. You've made and continue to make us what we are today, and we deeply appreciate it. So thank you very much. So let's begin. This one's for Mike DeGruy. We're proud to host tonight's discussion of Island Visions, written by and created by our two favorite sons of Santa Barbara, the brothers SB, so to speak, Jacob Seigel Brielle and Isaac Seigel Boettner. To introduce our speakers and to moderate this evening, I am pleased to introduce Mimi Armstrong DeGruy, a Santa Barbara local and an award-winning documentary filmmaker who directed Living Deep, The Life and Times of Mike DeGruy. Along with her late husband, Mike, she produced numerous hours of television for National Geographic Television and other broadcasts. Prior to that, Mimi worked for CNN, Turner Broadcasting Series Portrait of America, and the PBS series Infinite Voyage. She is the mother of two wonderful children and an enthusiastic supporter of environmental causes and children's education. Please welcome my dear friend, Mimi Armstrong DeGruy.
Okay, thank you, Tech. Thank you, Chaucer's. What a great bookstore. How lucky are we that we have this bookstore in town that even during the pandemic continues to provide books and also does these great speaker series or writers series. So I'm really honored to be a part of it, to talk with you all about this extraordinary book, Island Visions, created, as Tack said, by the Seigel Boettner brothers. So these two brothers are the sons of legendary educator John Seigel Boettner, who for many years taught at Santa Barbara Middle School, and then also Lynn Seigel Boettner, who continues to teach at Vieja Valley. And they, as they like to note, were born at Cottage. They're not twins, but they're close in age. Anyway, and I think the next day, each of them rode home on the back of a bicycle out of the hospital. And they've been riding bikes ever since. And they grew up here in Santa Barbara, but their parents would take them and then lucky groups of other kids on trips, bicycle trips around different parts of the world. They rode across the country. My son Max was lucky enough to ride around Rwanda at a time not long after the genocide had finished, when tourism was just beginning. So anyway, they had this adventurous life, and then they both actually went to Berkeley. Jacob studied peace and conflict studies, Isaac film studies, and after Berkeley, they created a production company together called, no surprise, Petalborn Pictures, and they've done a bunch of documentaries, commercials. I actually worked with them. They shot a couple of interviews for me. They're just extraordinary storytellers, as you'll see in this book. They're talented, they're smart, and best of all, they're really fun and good people. So I'm excited to share this, this screen with them. So where are they? Come on, Jacob and Isaac.
Hey, thanks, Mimi.
You're welcome. And then I want to introduce Brian Mcwilliams, because this book was a collaboration between the Seigel Boettner brothers and the Santa Barbara Middle School, and also maps.com. And Brian Mcwilliams is the head of the Santa Barbara Middle School. He also grew up in Santa Barbara. I think he surfed all the beaches of Santa Barbara growing up, and then went away to school, came back, and I think for much of his professional life, I believe, has been at Santa Barbara Middle School. And I should know the number of years he's been head of the school, but I can't quite remember. But I was lucky enough to be on the board when Brian was there. And I have to say, he's one of these people that has extraordinary commands of both his left brain and his right brain, and can toggle between, figures on a spreadsheet, and then, talk about these deep matters of the heart in education, and is really aspirational. And so together, this trio created this wonder of a book. So Brian, do you want to talk, why don't you three talk about how this book came to be? Brian, you're muted.
Yeah, Jacob, you want to kick it off with just describing the book a little bit? It's not your average book in any sense of the way.
Yeah, so this is Island Visions right here. It's we call it a tome of wonder or an untext book. And yeah, our goal with this book was really to capture the wonder and stories from this incredible place and do it in a way that sort of pays tribute to all the incredible people who live and breathe it on a daily and weekly and yearly basis. And so instead of writing the book ourselves, there's content that we wrote in here, but we have 40 different authors from all walks of life, from park rangers to Chumash elders to divers and surfers, scientists, all kinds of folks speaking to what makes this place such an incredible touchstone to learn about our local environment and the planet as a whole. And so, yeah, as we put together this page at the beginning of the book that sort of runs down, this book was written by 214 plankton, 5 students, 10 scientists, 3 dolphins, infinity ancestors, 345 tacos. It was very much a documentary of a book, taking our background as filmmakers and trying to weave together all these voices in a way that speaks to the power of this place.
Brian, do you want to share how the middle school, why don't you talk about your role in all of this?
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, Chaucers, for having us. I went out to the islands when I was about 14 or 15 on a Kate school trip with 10th graders. And I just realized at that time what a beautiful place it was. Just there's so much wonder and beauty. But I also realized even at a young age what an incredible classroom it was. I think we learned more in a week at the islands than in months of school studying, marine biology, hiking around, learning about the Chumash, learning about the ecosystem and about preservation. And we just had so much fun doing it. And then when I became an educator, we found ways to bring our students out there and get them on the road. We travel all over the place at Santa Barbara Middle School, but our own front yard is the most beautiful classroom, the most incredible laboratory in the world. And we really want our kids to understand where they live and have a sense of place. So I had the good fortune of being able to bring kids out there, including Jacob and Isaac when they were 14 and 15. And we explored the sea caves, we went surfing, we dove, we learned about the Chumash, we studied offshore drilling, and just talked to fishermen and rangers and learned about the history of the islands and learned about the island fox. And there's just so much to learn out there. And we had so much fun doing it. And then of course later, when your kids came to middle school, Mimi, and we got to meet you and Mike, getting Mike out there on the boat and having so much fun and diving in the water and capturing, all this great footage and looking at things under the microscope. You've never seen kids more alive, more excited, more curious, and learning so much and having so much fun doing it. They couldn't even decipher when the learning ended and when the fun began, and everything and everybody was a teacher. All the kids would do reports on different parts of the island, and we would all become teachers and students out on those boats and out on the islands with Truth Aquatics, and we just felt so lucky to be out there. And so that's how we got it going. Of course, Isaac and Jacob caught the bug and spread that. And we basically just tried to capture all the human exclamation points of their angles of the islands and how it affected their lives, much like Mike has done, has done his whole life. So we just feel very fortunate to be out there and be able to get kids out there. And I think that's one of the biggest points of this book, is to open up that island classroom to those who can get out there and those who can't get out there. We learn so much from studying island ecosystems. And so we just want to share it with the world and share our good fortune to live in such a beautiful place. So I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, going out there, I mean, that was really the beginning of it all. Jacob and I came back as, going back on middle school trips as alumni. It's work or help or whatever you want to call it, but it's really fun going out there and seeing that experience, and then seeing sometimes, I think there's a lot of great educational materials out there, but I don't necessarily think they all appeal to all types of learners at every age, especially in that elementary, junior high age where people are saying, oh, I'm a scientist, oh, I'm an artist, oh, I'm this, when I think some of the best mathematicians might you know, go into art because they didn't like their algebra class, or there's a lot of great biologists out there that are surfing. They just need to look a little bit below the surface. So this book was really taking those experiences out of the islands and saying, why isn't there a book that is full of color and exploding with life? Why is the text, yeah, it's you know, it's big, it's got a lot of information in it, but it's also fun and enjoyable. And that information, I think, it blows your mind at any age, whether you're a 2-year-old that's just looking at waves in kelp going up and down, or you're a scientist that's got a PhD in it. You know, sometimes the presentation of that information betrays the information itself. And when you're out on a boat, it's pretty hard to miss it. But when you're in a classroom, it's pretty easy to miss it sometimes. So it was really just about, yeah, getting that boat into a book.
You know, you're right. It's a really, really fun and lively, and I think actually very jolly book. It's just that the illustrations are informative, but they're also really kind of humorous. So to that point, can you guys as brothers talk about the division of labor between the two of you? Because I think that's really interesting. And I think I have to say, as a parent, I love the idea of two kids working together. I think, and I love the fact that you say in your website, we're more than a company, we're a family, which I have to say, I think most companies, whether you're blood related or not, would love that. But how do you balance who does what and stay friends?
Sometimes I think we give off so many parents say that sometimes, like, we were fighting right before we came here, but I think maybe we just see things, you know, brothers always see everything as fighting. But we've grown a lot working together within our relationship, and it's been cool to see, you know, we're always, you know, I don't think either of us planned on working together or that being it. It just kind of happened so naturally. It was never really a forced thing. And the older we've gotten, the more we've kind of seen how we're the same, but also seen how we're distinctly different brainwave patterns. For instance, I don't send a lot of emails because words and the right verbiage and things, they don't always come off as well for me. I'm more like the creative director at the company, ideas and directing side of things. Jacob's got a much better mind for, if Jacob wasn't a part of this company, there'd be 40 more years and I'd still be working on the book, you know, chasing some figment of my imagination, some illustration that needed like an extra, 10 days to draw a fish with.
So what you didn't say is that you did all the illustrations. Jacob is the wordsmith. So Jacob, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, with this book it was really fun to work on, and that I love writing, and I've loved writing ever since I was a kid, but to get the chance to both write and then interact with all these other amazing writers and storytellers in their own right was definitely a privilege. I mean, to get to email with Sylvia Earle and get a piece from her for the book, Carl Safina, Wallace J. Nichols, Deborah Miranda, all these amazing authors and poets and writers, and then to get all their pieces and put them together in this book and weave them together with our own editorial voice was a really fun creative challenge. It was almost, I mean, I keep coming back to, it wasn't a documentary, but it felt a lot of times like we were working in a timeline with different interview clips and adding our own little editorial bits here and there to weave it together. And so that was really fun and really rewarding to get the chance to add our own voice to those incredible voices as well. And we're so grateful to all the folks who donated their words and their photos and images to help bring this to life.
And one of the cool things I think I saw him do over the course of the project, from the first kind of sample chapter to where it is now, is, in filmmaking, we know editing so well. And when you edit someone, when you're making a movie, you don't have to tell them, you just kind of cut, paste, there's your 2-minute soundbite. With this, Jacob kind of had to work through how to we want this to come off well to fourth graders and to, coffee tables and everything in between in college classrooms. So trying to find that language balance with, they're not all writers, they're all experts in their own field in this book, and they're all amazing people with amazing stories. But, they're not all writers, and it's cool to see how all their language came together.
I think you did an amazing job because, yeah, you're right. And it's woven together seamlessly. You guys and the team that you worked with really did an amazing job. Can you talk a little bit about the assortment of people? You listed a few people, but you've got, you know, Cosmali Lopez talking about the Chumash, which I love. I love that idea of, you know, bringing such an important part of our history into the book and the current day with the Tomal. And by the way, actually, I think Mike filmed the Tomal crossing in 2001, I think. But anyway, could you talk about the how you chose the people that are in the book?
Yeah, Isaac, do you want to bring up Cosmali's spread?
Yeah, that's a good opportunity to share that piece. Yeah, one of our favorite things was experts of all types and putting them side by side. Sorry, I'm just talking while I'm pulling something up on.
Yeah, and I think too, we wanted to have as many varieties of ages too. I think one of the things we learned making this book, especially when it comes to the more maybe spiritual or philosophical aspects of sort of what connects us to this place and what connects us to this planet, that sometimes age doesn't really have any bearing on how deeply you can speak to a topic. And I think Cosmali Lopez, who's a young man who went to Santa Barbara Middle School, Chumash, participated in one of these paddles. He wrote this piece for us about the past and present legacy of the Tomal, which is the redwood plank canoe that's been part of Chumash culture for thousands of years, that I just think so beautifully captures so much of what we were trying to do with this book. And I'll read this little last passage that really spoke to me. The Tomal is not simply a canoe. It is not simply a boat. It is instead a living craft full of story and magic, ceremony and relationships. It is the song of the ocean echoing in our spirits for all of us to listen to. We should all listen and listen closely, for this song speaks of the pain of colonization. It speaks of the pollution, violence, and terror of our so-called modern civilization. But equally important, it speaks to the possibility of something else, not a dream, but what was before and what can be again, a different set of relationships and movement. Cosmali wrote this when he was in high school. And when I was editing his piece, I had to go look up words because he's just such an incredibly smart dude. And he took us to school, and a bunch of the other authors who were Chumash, it was a big learning experience for us, sort of unlearning a lot of the ways that we learned about California and the history of our home. And it was great to have them be brutally honest with us when we, said something or assumed something that wasn't accurate. And they were incredibly patient with us. And we learned how many different Chumash voices there are out there. But I think Cosmali was one of those authors that we felt, really, really honored to be able to include in this book. And someone who definitely I see as a teacher, even though he's 15 years younger than me.
Yeah, and with that, one thing we really tried to do in the book was make the Chumash not a story in the past, but a story in the present. And that's where Cosmali's story as a Chumash, but also youth, and looking at the identity of what it is, not as a picture in a book from a long time ago, but a picture in a book at a bunch of different series, and then also your neighbor, your friend, your classmate. Bringing that to light. We got educated on this book. It was going back to school, learning from these people.
I learned a lot. Like Tanya from UCSB, the geophysicist, talking about the Monterey Formation. I always wondered, I had no idea. I'd always wondered I think it's out at Hendry's where you see those kind of jutting things. I wondered what kind of rock that was, and to learn that they were skeletal sea creatures all embedded together was really interesting. Brian, I'm curious what you, as the choreographer or the ringleader initially, what kind of parameters did you give these guys?
Well, I gave them a bunch of old school, old guy parameters, which they quickly shattered and threw away, thank God. you should have seen what they had to learn from when I took them out there 20 years ago. We had an old ditto copied version of this. It was all black and white and barely, the copies didn't look good. It was like an old school, you know, UCSB reader from 1970, and the kids did really well with it. And then you get out there and it's one color, and they just brought all this color to it. So basically they taught us about how to write a book of the 21st century, and kind of shattered our notions of putting everything into an old school format, because to try to capture the islands, you just have to use color and creativity and capture so many different voices. And I think they found a format to do this. I love that this is a book for students of all ages, because we always say, if we're getting it right, you know, we might start out as teachers with our students, but then our students learn and ask questions that teach us, and then they become the teachers. And so this is what happened here is, you know, I showed them and pointed them towards the island, and they've learned so much more about it. They're my experts that I go to now, and they've learned so much about it. So that was the idea, that they took this to a whole nother level, and now I'm the student and learning from them. So it's been full circle, and I'm just so proud to be part of it.
One of the big things with us, with where Brian, you know, gave us this project from, and with all the amazing people part of it, we really wanted to make sure if we were going to make a book, that it was a book worth making. Not that it's not worth sharing information and stories, but if you're actually going to, you know, put some paper together, you're going to put some ink on it, you're going to ship it to different people's houses, it's going to sit on people's tables, is it a worthwhile object to be putting forth? And that was a big thing we always came back to, as we kind of kept being like, should we do this thing that books don't do? Is this a good idea? And it was always like, we should definitely do that thing, even though, you know.
Wait, what's an example of that?
I mean, just the very base format of it, of the multi-authors. Like, I would love to make another book and not do that. But still incorporate different stories, but just because it was so much work to bring all of that stuff together, to put it all in one flowing, you know, Jacob and I have had probably 4 or 5 different like spiritual arcs of the whole book, of trying to figure out, everyone's story makes sense, but how does it fit together as one cohesive thing? And I don't think many people will read it from beginning to end. We've set it up so that you don't have to do that at all. But we still wanted to make sure that there was a flow. So if there's, you know, 6 pages together, that you go from one to the next and you're able to follow the journey as it goes.
I remember showing this to Jean-Michel Cousteau, and we were talking about all this stuff, the first drawing of this, and we were having this lively conversation, and Jean-Michel was saying, you know, these incredible things, and then I just lost him. He got so buried in this kelp forest, the underwater skyscraper, he stopped talking for about 10 minutes, and yeah, there you go. And he was just, I mean, he's seen more underwater, visions than anybody. And he just was like, this is incredible. And he just got lost on this page. And then to watch my own 12-year-old do the same, sitting in bed at night and just be staring at a page like this for 10 minutes and coming back to it. It reminds me of some of the books that I read when I was a kid that you could go back to and keep harvesting different things, and also see it visually and see things that you couldn't really describe in words. And even sometimes a photograph doesn't capture it. So it's just, I mean, that was one of those things that this book does differently than most books I've ever read.
I mean,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Chaucer's there in terms of the role that they played in making this book. We were very fortunate as kids to see the world outside of 4 walls, but just as meaningful to us was inside of the corner of a bookstore reading comic books, you know, as our parents looked for their books. That was like a after school hang for us. We were excited when Chaucer's was the destination, and I could read Tintin or Asterix or, you know, The Way Things Work or some of those books in there. And it's been really cool as I've been illustrating everything for the book, you know, every couple months go down and visit the family and look at the bookshelf in my old room and pull books off and be like, oh, I'm just ripping off The Way Things Work right now subconsciously. Like, oh, that's just a Shel Silverstein illustration that I just subconsciously lifted, you know, was inspired by. I mean, it's not so direct, but you see them side by side, and you can't help to see some of the influences of the Chaucer's kids section in this book if you look closely.
But that's the way great art is, you know, you always build on the past. And I think actually as a diver, I love this one particularly because I just remember going along a reef and thinking there's just this whole like apartment complex with all of these people in it. So this is perfect, you know, and I think the complexity of that world is really vividly illustrated. I think it's wonderful.
I think that's a good segue to Mike there in terms of we were watching some clips before this of Mike DeGree, who's a big inspiration for this, and seeing, I mean, we didn't grow up underwater. We were very much land lovers as kids, but knowing Mike really got us to see that surface as not like a dividing line. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to know too what the particular challenges were for you guys, and Brian, you too.
I mean, I think the biggest one was just all of the authors in this book are amazing people who have their own amazing research projects and books that they're writing and places that they're traveling. And I think it's, you know, from inception to when we first sat down with Brian and proposed this crazy idea, I think it's been about 7 years. And for some folks, it was how long it took for us to finally track them down and send them revisions. And can we make this one last change to your piece, or can we use this one more photo? Yeah, it just took a long time to weave together. And then, like Isaac said, we've probably had like 15 different storyboards of the book. And right now it's divided up into 8 chapters, each one sort of looking at a different theme or lens that speaks to a different part of the islands. And there's so many ways you can chop this. There's so many stories that didn't make the book. We have a whole chapter that was a Marine Field Guide that didn't make the cut just because it was too much good stuff. And so I think that was the hardest thing was this place has so many incredible stories, and we hope that when people read the book, it doesn't answer all their questions. It makes them ask more questions. Because I think if you visit this place and you understand everything that's going on, you're not looking hard enough. We purposefully have authors in the book who might not agree with each other, especially when it comes to like what conservation and preservation means. And I think it's really important for people to understand and listen to all of those voices, even if they don't agree with them, because this is all of our front yard and backyard. And we all kind of have to come together and put together a plan of how to keep places like this the way they are, or as undisturbed as we can. And so that was a good and fun challenge, I think, weaving these together and figuring out how to present as many perspectives as we could, and hopefully get people to listen to someone who maybe they didn't think was an expert. We talked to fishermen who work on conservation projects and they spend a ton of time out on the water, more so than anybody else. And they're, regardless of whether you agree with folks all the time, like they see stuff that other people don't. And so I think it's really important to listen to that and listen to those voices. And hopefully this book exposes readers to some new voices, who people they didn't think of as experts, and gets them to think about that a little differently.
Brian, is there anything you want to contribute to that?
I mean, while it took a while for us to get this together, it was because it wasn't so much a challenge of hardship. It was a challenge of having so much passion and so much wonder and so many people and so many directions to go. And every time we hit a roadblock where we weren't sure, people came out of the woodwork to support us and help us. I mean, I think of Laura Francis, I think of Scott Simon, I think of Hillary Hauser, I think of Mimi and Mike, I think of all these people that kind of would give us, Peter Schuyler would, turn us in directions. I think of John Glanville and maps.com, I think of Noah and all these folks that we were just saying, oh, they just share the passion and the love of this place. And so it kind of wrote itself. We're here just trying to put out some good work to turn people onto the islands and help us understand the place we live and preserve, what's beautiful and open it up as a classroom. And, for those who can't get there, we're fortunate enough to get there, but this book we'll bring it to people who can't get there, and we can learn about the joy and the wonder, and it translates. So for every challenge we had, there was just so much love and wonder and appreciation. It kind of just took care of itself and floated itself, because it's such a kind of a pure project. And I think we're just getting started.
That was the real blessing working with middle school as the guiding light, is that the only goal was to inspire wonder. I mean, that was like, there's a lot of things, but there's a lot of lessons, there's a lot of conservation, stewardship for the environment we want in there, but none of that is relevant if you don't get that wonder. Education comes after the care or the desire to learn so often. And so that being the mandate was so cool. And the longer the project went and still goes, I mean, in some ways the project really is just starting with what our goals are. We're meeting the islands community more and more because it's bigger than we ever knew. So, you know, at first Scott Simon out at Reef wasn't really a part of the project, but then he came out on the boat one year and all of a sudden that became an arm of the community of Island Visions, and having him a part of it was so huge to see ways in which people are interacting with the marine environment in Santa Barbara. And that just kept happening the longer we were working on the book, finding who at the Botanic Gardens would help contribute to the project, to find everyone to come together. And at this point now, we're so excited about, now that the book's out there, getting it out into the world and seeing who will use it, because that's really the next big step of this endeavor.
Well, that's a perfect segue to what is the vision for Island Visions? Do you guys want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it started off as a project in the classroom inspired by middle school. And as Brian said, I think as we developed it and as we shared these stories and shared them with friends and family and total strangers, we realized that it sounds cliche and cheesy, but students of all ages is kind of exactly who we want this book to be for. You know, we're working on, you know, making it available to teachers in classrooms and providing some more place and story-based learning, some examples that are right in our backyard, to help bring science and history and literature alive. But we also want it to be a book that anybody would want to go grab and bring down to the beach. This copy's been field tested. It's been in a lot of sand all over Santa Barbara, and it can survive. So we want it to be something that anybody would want to bring down and read at the beach, take out on a hike, share with their kids, share with their grandkids, share with their friends. I think there's a lot of different pieces in here. And so I think it can speak to a lot of different people, and educate people on a lot of different levels, whether it's in a classroom or in a classroom that doesn't have four walls.
And I think I love that the book, you know, ends on what can you do, and I think Carl's piece was really excellent about its, you know, the state of the ocean at the moment, and just, but I also think you don't conclude it with hope. I mean, you conclude it with hope, you know, and I think that's a powerful thing. And listing all the different organizations that people can connect to and is great. Yeah,
for us that was a big, I mean, writing this book was confronting our own environmental world depression and trying not to channel that into the book, and using the book as a way to look forward. There's 40 amazing stories in this book, but hopefully it inspires 400 more people to take up the mantle and move through it and see it not as, you know, not no island. That's what this, you know, at the end we're trying to end not on the message of anything other than like stand up together, and we're in this, it's all of us together, kind of going through this experience. You know, there's this kind of island metaphor we run with throughout the book about how islands are so amazing for their isolation, and that creates the island fox and these amazing histories, but ultimately there's no such thing as an island anymore, and we can't see that concept as existing anywhere other than our planet as a whole. So that's kind of the ending sort of message there. And then as you see those big overwhelming issues, we lead off with it, but I thought it's a great quote to share from Mike here. Don't look at the big overwhelming issues of the world. Look in your own backyard. Look in your heart. What do you care about that isn't right where you live? Fix it. And that's really kind of the core of the whole thing. As big as the issue ever gets, you know, start with what you care about.
Well, and I think one of the things about this book that I felt really strongly after reading is, I think when people read it, they won't look at the channel the same way. I mean, from the geology, you know, all the way back up to current, to the ecology, to all of the people. I mean, I think if everyone feels much more connected and invested in this and feels a part of the natural world, then you know how it goes, then you take care of it. And the idea that there are a lot of people who don't even know what's beneath the surface of that water out there. So I think you do an amazing job.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I remembered sitting in the I think it was one of the theaters at middle school, and Mike showing us a bunch of clips of all the different places that that you all had gone to and filmed. And the one thing that really struck me was how he made animals and creatures and organisms who might not even have eyes or faces or anything. You still felt like you were looking at them and making a human connection. And I think that was something that he really inspired in us, was that, you know, the vampire squid or the purple orb down in the depths of the channel, they're just as much a resident of this planet as we are. And that's how you get to care about a place, is if you realize the other creature down there doesn't look like you, but they're impacted in the same ways. And I think that was something we really tried to channel. And little plug, anybody who doesn't know about Mike Gruy, check out Diving Deep, Mimi's film that's coming out soon on iTunes. You'll learn a lot of really cool, amazing, see some places and creatures who you never thought you could relate to. And I think, Mimi, the way you wove Mike's story in and showed how he did that is a really powerful reminder of all of our neighbors on this planet.
Thank you. Yeah, divingdeepmovie.com, and then you can find out. But just back to this, because I think one of his primary goals was to introduce people. I mean, to be a mouthpiece. He's a pretty good one for those who didn't have their own voice. You know that, and I think with, just as you say, the idea that the more we understand that they have every right to be here on this planet as we do, the better off we're all going to be. Hi, Tack, you're back.
Yeah, I just had a question actually for Mimi. Seeing Jacob and Isaac and Brian's work and the influence Mike had on everyone else, and to see this beautiful project come to fruition, how does that make you feel about Mike's legacy and what, you know, how many people he's touched? If you could talk a little bit about your feelings about the response from the influence your husband had.
Well, gosh, I think, yeah, it's pretty incredible, actually. How his life does seem, or his spirit, I guess, does seem to reverberate. And I don't know, sometimes I've had conversations with his brothers about this, and, you know, because he was attacked by a shark and knew, and pretty much died, and came back, did he have a greater sense of life's frailty, and did he really put into what time he had a lot more energy than he maybe might have otherwise, or was he just born that way? I don't know, but whatever the case, he gave out a lot. He gave out a lot of energy, and it's a really good example to me of how that comes back, you know. And I think yeah, I mean, he just made everybody feel like they were the most important person in the room, and that's a pretty great gift. So anyway, it feels great. Yeah.
Well, I just see
wouldn't exist without Mike Gruy.
What?
Yeah,
I just said, then this book wouldn't be here without Mike. So I mean, it started with Mike, the memorial funds that we used to get this off the ground, and you know, this wouldn't exist without Mike. So this really is an extension of Mike's work.
Well, he would be so proud of you two, all three of you, and so proud of this book. And he would be, you know, he'd probably buy as many copies as he could to give them away to people, you know, because I just love opening it up to any place. As you say, you don't have to read it sequentially. You can just pick it up and there's a nugget in there. I'll be reading it again and again, I think, because I don't tend to retain a lot. So I think it's, yeah, anyway. Well, do you guys want questions from the audience? It looks like there are a few.
Yeah, I guess any folks have any questions?
I'd like to just quickly shout out all the photographers. We were really lucky. I mean, one of the things making this book, just trying to inspire wonder in the memory of Mike, was we got a lot of people to contribute things to the project. And we just want to thank everyone that gave a little bit of their work and their exclamation mark to the book. There's some amazing photos, there's some amazing stories, original work, donated work, and we just really appreciate all the locals that got involved with this.
Yeah, and just quick shout out. I see we've got Robert Schwemmers tuned in from NOAA. He's got some incredible images that we were able to use from the book and stories of shipwrecks, and that image that Isaac showed earlier of the tomall at sunrise, that just is, it speaks so many words. That this book has words in it, but we wanted to make sure the images spoke equally as well, and they weren't just filling spaces, that they were saying just as much as a 500-word essay would. And I think his images just do such an incredible job at doing that. Morgan Mauson, another amazing local ocean photographer, let us use some of his pieces that just capture the texture of the water so well. And yeah, the photographers created some amazing images that we were able to use in this book.
Diver Doug, Douglas Plug, Diver Doug on Instagram. He did a lot of the fish in the book. That he's very much a kindred spirits of Mike. We got to hang out with him a little bit, and he was talking about just going down and hanging out before he pulls the camera out and just hanging out with fish. And you can see it. That photo of the kelp forest with the fish in there, that was his.
Yeah, it's a great combination of stills, illustrations. I mean, it feels cinematic, actually. You know, the book itself, I think. I love that part about it. Yeah. What's next for you guys?
Great question.
Always a good question.
I mean, we're on the edge of making another book, but for now, I mean, really getting this with everything that's happening in the world right now, being flexible to get this book out to classrooms and writing, however that's going to work over the next 6 months, is going to be a big endeavor for us. We're up in the Bay Area doing video production, making some pieces up here, and then we've got some ideas for follow-up book projects that you might hopefully hear from us soon on. Good.
Well, do you want those questions? Now there are more than there were. I don't know who has access to those. I don't. Do you, Isaac?
I see questions. It looks like most of them are comments. It looks like Tack's been in there answering.
Okay.
I think I see a couple down here towards the bottom. Yeah, we've got Stephen was wondering, the book focuses on the 4 northern Channel Islands. Yeah, that was a hard decision to make, because you say the Channel Islands, and that can mean so many different things to different people. Is it the national park? Is it the 4 northern? Is it the 4 southern? And story-wise, we kind of had to just decide to stick with the 4 northern islands: Anacapa, Santa Rosa, Santa Cruz, and San Miguel, if for no other reason than Catalina is its own book in terms of the number of stories. And that was just an editorial decision that we made. But there could be island visions too on just the southern islands as well. Because I mean, you look at the island fox, and the reason it almost went extinct down there is totally different than on the 4 northern islands. And so our island fox chapter in here would be a completely different set of voices and stuff in there. So yeah, it's just the 4 northern Channel Islands.
Good question.
Jacob, did you want to read Mike Murray's question here?
Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Yeah, so Mike Murray, what would you say are 1 or 2 things that we learned about the wildlife or people associated with the islands that we never knew before?
There's so many good ones in there. My favorite that are, is the idea of this kelp superhighway that went down the western coast of North America. When you learn about human migration, at least when I learned about human migration, which is probably all outdated, but what I learned is that they crossed the land bridge following big game. And there's an alternate theory that the kelp forests were the thing moving with food down the coastline. Because if you think about the abundance of what those forests are and what they provide, it does make sense. And there's some remains that kind of confirm that theory. I don't know if it's like locked in stone, but the idea that the entire western coast was this vibrant waterway that people traveled down, and migration went that way. And then similarly, it's just presented as a theory in the Island Fox chapter is the idea that perhaps those foxes didn't evolve out there, but there's maybe the chance that Chumash took them out there and they were more kind of domesticated and bred to be that size. Again, not like a necessarily like a solid fact that you go around saying, but an interesting idea to conceive of, the idea that these foxes out there were brought out by the Chumash, and some of the DNA evidence supports the fact that their evolution didn't happen over such a long period of time that normally would go with the natural selection on an island. And I just thought that's so fascinating with everything we learn about the fox, and then the idea of saving the fox, that we created the fox potentially, not we, but like humans created them, is just such an evocative, interesting, philosophical thing to consider.
Yeah, I think that sort of brought up to like hearing that alternate theory of the fox or the kelp superhighway made me realize how not static our knowledge about the world is. I mean, in school, you kind of learn that there's certain things that are the way they are, whether it's science or history, but reading this book and talking to people who are at the cutting edge of their fields makes you realize like how much we don't know and how much what we do know, we're constantly realizing that we don't actually know. And that's both really terrifying and really exciting, because it means that, you know, a kid reading this book could eventually be inspired and debunk one of the theories that we wrote about here, or discover a completely alternate way of thinking about things. And I think that's really awesome, and something that we wanted to do by having these 40 different authors is show people there's all these different ways that you can learn from this place, all these different professions and footsteps you can follow in. Instead of author bios at the beginning of each article, we asked each author to pick 4 moments from up until they were in their current career, which for various authors, it depends on how old they are, but 4 moments that sort of guided them on their path. And we hope that readers pick this up and read those moments, and maybe some of them echo with folks and make them consider, you know, I didn't think I could be a marine biologist, but oh, that person, you know, got nipped by a fish when they went on their first dive too, and I didn't realize like they were a kid just like me at one point. Yeah, here's Scott from the Botanic Gardens put together this great little mini bio for us, and so that was another thing that we want to do with this book, is just sort of demystify the scientists and experts too, and like everybody was a kid at one point, and they're still learning too.
I love that. I think that was really powerful to me, reading those little bios. Yeah, very smart.
If I can add that the Botanic Gardens has a wonderful Channel Islands exhibit that they had just completed not too long ago, and I highly recommend people go to see it. They don't feel like the boat ride out to the islands is for them. They could go up to the Botanic Gardens and check out things up there and really get a good sense of what it's like out there on the islands.
Absolutely. Yeah. The view, just for the view alone, it's one of the most incredible little spots they have up there, to be surrounded by those plants from the islands on all sides. And then it's just this teed up view on a clear day.
And plants are cool too. That was one thing we really wanted to get in here, is sometimes plants don't get as much of the exciting factoids and pages and material as the, you know, charismatic megafauna, the blue whales, the great white sharks. But we really wanted to show people like there's some plants found out on the islands that are found like on one little point that are found nowhere else on this planet. And they exist in like, sometimes they'll go dormant and you won't see them for 15 years. And then all of a sudden they'll be back. And that's just so incredible. And so we wanted to have the folks from the garden, and Peter Schuyler especially, really helped us make plants cool.
Yeah, Peter wrote 6 wonderful haikus about different endemic and invasive species out on the islands to go with like more concrete descriptions of their roles out there. And he really brought it to life, you know, presenting in prose what these poems for these amazing plants.
Isn't there more endemism out there than anywhere else? Sorry, Tack, one last question.
Sorry.
I was just asking these 2 experts. Isn't there more endemism on the Channel Islands than anywhere except the Galapagos, I think?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely referred to as like North America's Galapagos, which I think is all the more incredible. Like that I didn't realize that even growing up in Santa Barbara, that there are all these species that evolved there and are found nowhere else on this planet. But there's definitely, I mean, if you want to look at how things can evolve on their own, the Channel Islands is, if not on equal with the Galapagos, like the next place down from there where you would study how these creatures evolved like that, and plants too. So yeah, it's just such an incredible place that's just off on the horizon that I think a lot of people who even grew up on the South Coast don't realize what's out there. We hold up amazing other national parks like Yosemite, and there's amazing places out there, but there's also one of these right off our coast too.
How are we doing?
So you guys, we're doing well. I think this would be a good time to possibly share some closing thoughts, gentlemen, about your project, about the reactions, about just about anything.
Yeah, I'm excited for that kid. So much of this is the middle school saying, because of us, them, because of them, us, this cyclical nature of making things and sharing stories and being on both sides of the storytelling experience, listening and telling. And I'm excited to think about, the person kind of like me that's going to get this book on their desk at some point, that looks out at the Channel Islands like I did when I was 7, thinking they were just the really far north coastline. That must be San Francisco, like that's a real thought that people have when they see those cliffs on the horizon, and opening their mind a little bit. I'm just so excited to see where we go from here with this, and who picks it up.
Yeah, I think sort of echoing off that, I hope some kid picks this up and discovers a new species out there when they're in college, and goes on to be someone who if we did another version of this book 30 years from now, they'd be someone who we'd be going to get their story, and that this helps sort of spark more of these 40 people who are in here are sort of a time capsule of right now, who some amazing folks are out at the islands. But I hope it exponentially increases the number of people who go out and look at this place and study it, who fish it, who dive it, who surf it, who take pictures of it, who write about it. I'm just excited to see what, who the visionaries are 20 years from now.
Brian.
Well,
Wait, can we get Brian?
Go ahead, Brian.
Brian, you're muted.
These boys should have the last word, because they've done such an incredible job with this. They've brought this to life. And but I'll just say it's been such an honor to watch this project grow, watch them take this project over and bring it to new heights, and put out a book that'll be teaching for decades, if not centuries. This is going to be a pretty important work to really produce another couple thousand Mike DeGrees and Hillary Hausers and Ernie Brookses. So I'm just really excited to see where this goes. I just remember watching the kids get out to the islands, and they're looking around in every direction. They're having so much fun. There's a frenzy of learning and joy and wonder, and they're just getting so much out of it. And suddenly you realize, instead of being the teacher and like being the fountain of knowledge and telling them what to do, you get out of the way, and the sea lion and the sea cave and the coreopsis and the pot of orcas become the teachers, and you just kind of get out of the way, and the island becomes the teacher. And I remember I saw this one kid running around the boat. There was pelagic crabs in the water. There was phosphorus, and it was 9 o'clock at night. We've done science projects and cleanups on the beach, and we've surfed, and we've been in sea caves. And she's running around, and there's so much excitement at 10 o'clock at night. And I think it was off Southeast Anchorage, so calm, and the potato patch. And there was dolphins jumping up in the air. And it was just incredible. And she just yelled out to the world, "I know what I want to be. I want to be a marine biologist." This is it. We did it. We're done. And I think that's what this book captures.
Congratulations, you guys. And Tech, thank you so much for, featuring it. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Jacob, Isaac, a wonderful project. Brian, you too. Mimi, it's an honor to share the screen with you. And I wish you the best on this project. And to everyone else, I wish you a safe and happy New Year. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Good night.
Everybody.
See y'all.